Hello and welcome to Policy Bazaar. I'm Arjun Bhagat. Now, a study conducted by a leading financial institution shows that in India, only 13% of urban women are confident about the adequacy of their financial plans. Now, the other startling figure shows that 42% of educated urban women have only a basic plan in place that falls well short of covering all long-term goals for themselves and their families. One of the key aspects of gender equality is financial security. So it becomes even more important for us to look at how women can work towards financial empowerment. In this show, we will look at why women are hesitant towards financial planning. Does a woman's money plan need to be different from a man's? Now, to give us more clarity on the subject, we have Yashish Daya with us, CEO and founder of Policy Bazaar. Thanks, Yashish. Do you agree with the findings of this study, given your vast experience in this field?
See, one obviously ends up generalizing. You obviously find certain women who are very astute at their financial planning, and then of course, but from a generalization perspective, yeah, it's largely true that financial planning is mostly left to the men, and a lot of women, if suddenly put in a position where they have to make financial decisions, may find it slightly difficult. Yes.
So in terms of the traditional way that women have been investing, I mean, what have some of those traditional ways have been, and what are some of the alternatives available to them?
See, if you look at the mindset, again generalizing here, and I want to put this caveat across this show that there'll be a lot of generalization in this show, but let's just kind of go with that.
Right.
The traditional mechanisms by which women have stored wealth or created is mostly helping the family get the house or gold and jewelry, mostly jewelry. At least in India, we are the largest jewelry hub in the world by far and away. Now, of course, that doesn't mean they go for gold or gold biscuits or something of that sort. It's just there's lots of making charges, etc. And when you do try to sell gold, you do figure out jewelry, you do figure out how much you've lost in that. And it's also a fairly risky mechanism because essentially you are commodity trading. We're not seeing it that way, but essentially they're commodity trading over a very long period of time, and commodities can move either way.
And we've seen gold prices going down.
They do move, right? They do fluctuate. Today, gold is very necessary. It's a demand supply. See, commodities have a demand supply piece, and if the demand for gold, for whatever reasons, were to fall, of course, there's a huge amount of gold which is fairly non-useful if people stopped wearing jewelry. So there are some complications there, and it's not very thought through, and it's not very analytic in that.
So how should what should the first step towards financial planning be for a woman? Again, we're generalizing, but still, I mean, how do you actually go about and say, all right, I have a family, my husband is probably earning, what should I do? Let's
start at a macro level. There are fundamentally two things which I believe are somewhat different about women and men. Of course, they have different physiologies, which means they can have different diseases, and which means they have different life stages. Women usually have a longer life stage than men. So nothing negative there, but it is different, and hence one needs to think about that. The second thing is, most families, women tend to be more security oriented, men tend to be more growth oriented. So whichever way you look at it.
So it can be a good balance, right?
It can be a good balance, as long as the balance is there. If just the man makes most of the decisions, financial decisions, then it'll be a growth-oriented strategy, which has very little security planning, which is pretty much the situation in India. When I say security, I mean security in terms of life insurance, in terms of health insurance, in terms of home insurance, in terms of actually having the home. Men's thoughts are not naturally geared in that direction. That is usually the woman's thought is geared. And I think time has come, and time was always there, but I think women should step up and create that fine balance within their families, where while the man is making the decision to invest in mutual funds and create the growth, the security aspect, what happens at retirement, what happens to children's, the man does not have to be the only Mr. Fix-It in the financial issues of the family, and hence the balance would be very good, because suddenly you'll be thinking about issues which have to do with what if this goes wrong, what if this goes wrong, how do we protect that situation, because that security is very, very important for the woman.
Right, and let's look at financial insurance products for women.
Yes.
What are some of the specific ones that women should be looking at?
So see, let us start with what anybody should be looking at. If one is looking at health-specific products, there are specific products that have been created for women, especially along the critical illness lines. So, Aegon Religare has one, Bajaj has one. Most of the insurance companies would have one or two products which are specific for women, and principally what they do is they cover for, see, it's a fairly established fact that men tend to have more heart attacks at a particular age than women. And of course, cervical cancer, breast cancer, these are diseases more associated with women. So you have a critical illness plan that covers those diseases more and better than some of the other diseases. And that tends to be a good plan for women. But besides the health aspect, when one is looking at a pure financial planning piece, I think the woman should take the first step in explaining the risks that go with loss of income. Because she may or may not be the one who's leading the income, and she may be the one who's leading the income, but either way, she needs to bring out the topic of loss of income of the family. Because, you know, all of us, just look back the last 20, 30 years, we would have all come across some unfortunate incident somewhere within, you know, our first degree of friends and family, where such events have happened.
And you know, there is this hesitancy, there's this taboo associated with talking about life insurance policies or term plans.
Yes.
You know, I don't want to talk about it with my husband, or the husband doesn't want to do it because, you know, there's some superstition involved. I mean, you know, talk about that a little bit, because, you know, at the end of the day, you are looking at the family's financial security if one of the partners dies.
See, in 1983, my uncle died, my mother's sister's husband. And not just did she not want to talk about term insurance, when she got the 10 lakh rupee term insurance, a lot of her sisters were asking her not to take the money because they were almost calling it blood money. Now, that is an extreme social situation, which we don't need to be in. You know, fundamentally, we need to understand that when these unfortunate events happen, security is required, and this needs to be discussed. And it needs to come out in the open. There is no two ways about it, and the woman has to bring it up. In fact, we look at our own site, a lot of the searchers, they may be buying the plan for the man, but a lot of the searchers are women. You know, specifically during office hours, almost 25 to 30%.
So they're actually calling up and trying to find out what...
They're actually finding out about term insurance and, you know, all the details about it. Now, I hope that conversation is happening back home where they're discussing with their husbands, because mostly the financial decisions are you know, being made there. So the security aspect does need to come in. And then there is the whole child planning piece. You know, the children are going to grow up. They will have education requirements. I went to INSEAD, right? And I spent about 16 lakh rupees. Just yesterday, I was talking to one of my colleagues, and I was advising him, you know, why don't you also go? He says, do you know, INSEAD now costs 75 lakhs. So the point is, and this is within 10 years, I didn't even know that within 10 years, the thing has gone 5x. Now, somebody needs to plan for it. Suddenly, you know, hit me that, oh my God, things have become that expensive. What will they become in 10 years' time? Will I actually be able to afford, you know, that kind of education for my children? So those are the questions that people have to grapple with. And I think the woman can be fairly proactive in thinking about these issues, along with pension. What happens later on? In fact, even the man is very concerned about the pension issues. So whether it's pension, whether it's child cost planning, education planning, settlement planning, or whether it is base risk cover, whether it's even a home insurance cover.
Right.
You know, a lot of the contents in the home, if you genuinely ask most men to list out what all contents they have in their home, they may find it difficult to even list them out.
Right.
The woman is mostly aware of what all she stands to lose in case of a flood or in case of... And these are events that do happen. It is just that we don't see them every day, and that is precisely why there are insurance companies.
So let's look at working women now.
Yes.
You know, in the pre-married stage and the post-marriage stage, I mean, do things change a lot? And also, how should they go about planning their for their financial future?
So see, in the pre-marriage days, many women in India are somewhere linked closely with their families, with their parental families, and some are pretty much on their own. The ones that are on their own obviously have to do all their financial planning themselves, but otherwise the ones that are with their parents, a lot of the dependencies, you know, interlinkages are there. And I think the one piece that they can plan for pre-marriage, and in fact there are three situations, while in a man's stage, it's largely two situations where, you know, there's pre-marriage and post-marriage. In the women's situation, there is pre-marriage, pre-children, and then post-marriage, post-children. So, you know, you've got those three stages coming in. So what you see is women can start to plan around their tax planning, around their long-term fund planning. They can have some planning prior to marriage. In fact, I would not advise very long-term planning then, because once they do get married, they may need to rejig their plans along with their spouse. Right. I think they should have a conversation once they've got married about some of the risks that they take combined, because they suddenly become two people into a party. The moment the children appear on the stage, different things happen. Some women take a short break from career, some women take a long break from career. It's not necessary, but some women do. And that suddenly makes them more dependent from a financial perspective on the spouse. And so that situation needs to be considered, and that situation needs to be addressed. In case, of course, once the children are there, there's long-term planning. So these are different stages. But I would say pre-marriage, not very long-term, very committed investments, maybe short-termish investments, 5 years, 10-year kind of investments, through which one can get out of post-marriage and replan the finances so that together your kitty is much stronger. And whether it's buying a house or whether it's taking an investment plan or whether it's planning for the children, all of that stuff is taken care of.
What about retirement planning for women? Is that different from men?
It's the same for everybody. Everybody gets old, and usually as we get older, we're not, society doesn't allow us to work, or we don't feel strong enough to work. Although in the UK they just brought out a law that you can't retire. So there is an anti-retirement law.
Oh, really? I wasn't aware.
So this has come out in the UK. What it says is you cannot be asked to leave your job on the basis of age. So you can be asked to leave if you become incompetent or whatever else, but not on the basis of age. It's discrimination. So I'm sure the world will move in that direction at some stage.
Well, retirement age is being
increasing.
Here,
Just look at the survey that came out yesterday. Our life expectancy has gone up by 5 years in the last 10 years.
Right.
So automatically these things are going to start having, people at 60, 65 are still looking young.
And so for women, it makes all the more sense to start planning in a very systematic way.
They have, I think, by about 30, if you have not planned for your retirement, there is a cause for worry. If by 40 you haven't done it, then you need to have started yesterday.
So let me start at that point. Suppose you haven't done it. You are a working woman till you're 40. You probably have a decent bank balance.
Yes.
What should be done then?
I think the first thing in retirement planning is to know what are the expected costs, what are going to be the expected costs, how are they likely to play out, and then start planning backwards and starting to arrange them. You can't change, and also not to feel very bad about what's happened till date, because a lot of people say, I haven't done it so far, what's the point now? The point is, whatever's happened has happened. You can't even change what you did 5 minutes ago, but let alone what you did 10 years ago. But today is the first day of the rest of your financial planning life and the rest of your life. So you start today. And the next 10 years are going to be the most valuable period in your investment future. So that's precisely how you do it. If you're 40, you start investing now. You obviously need to put in a larger amount if you're 40 than you needed to if you were 30. So if you were 30, you probably have to invest half the amount on an annual basis than if you're 40. But you have to still do that, and the retirement planning.
Right. So what advice would you give young couples? Suppose of course both of them are working, and that is a reality these days where both of them are working. How should a young couple plan that future out for themselves, where they both have solid financial plans?
I think while they're young, while the children are not around, they have to think about, they usually would be thinking about asset growth, so which is getting your house in order.
Actually, Yashish, we're talking about young couples, how they should go about planning, and as far as the woman is concerned, a great influencer of the family in terms of the right direction. What advice would you give them?
I would say most people at that stage are thinking about which house to buy. They are probably thinking about when they will have kids, maybe 2 years, 4 years from now. I think as long as thinking about kids, the health planning, especially around some of the pieces like maternity covers, etc., should come in there. They of course have to build up towards their asset base. They will, once they have children, a lot of expenses will go into children. That's not a stage when you can save a lot. And once the children go to college, there will be further expenses. So chances are they will suddenly find themselves one day 45 and not have planned for retirement at all. So it's advisable, if they really scrimp through and save a bit for retirement right now, that'll be very, very valuable. If they're able to save in this first 5 years or so, that'll be far more valuable than they can ever do from 45 onwards. Because I'm assuming most people, when they're married, are between 25 to 33. Right. And at that stage, if they save for 5 years, they'll be very, very valuable in the retirement planning.
Right, Yashish, it's time to take viewers' questions. We've got Anand from Delhi, and he says, I've been advised eye surgery and I have an insurance policy from Cholamandalam that I purchased last year. The cover is for 5 lakhs. I wanted to know if I can claim eye surgery in this.
So see, there are two kinds of eye surgery. One is permanent exclusion, one is temporary exclusion. The permanent exclusion is usually laser surgery, The partial, the temporary exclusion is usually, your basic cataract.
And he hasn't really given us the details.
No, he has. He said that he's bought the policy just last year.
Right.
If he's bought the policy just last year and he did not have a continuing policy before that, then it's unlikely that any eye cataract would be permitted under it, because there's usually a 2 to 4 year waiting period before cataract can be covered. So I think he needs to look at his policy and see whether it is a temporary exclusion or a permanent exclusion, and when the exclusion gets over.
Oh, okay. We've got Rajesh Mehra from Delhi, and he says, I have a family floater policy for 3 lakhs, but my insurer is refusing to enhance the cover, saying that because my mother's age is 70 years, I have, and of course he's been insured for the last 10 years and he's not made a single claim. And he says, I've complained to IRDA, but that hasn't really had any effect.
See, the insurer is not required to necessarily increase cover. If he senses a higher risk, he's required to continue your policy, but not to increase cover. So it's usually advisable to take a larger cover policy up front. Now, the second piece is he's taking a family floater policy, including his mother in it.
Right.
His mother is 70, and likelihood is the insurance company is seeing that as a higher risk, element in the policy. So what he could do is break up this policy, continue his mother in a separate policy, and continue himself and his family in a separate policy, and his younger family in a separate policy. Then he could approach the insurer to enhance the cover for himself and his younger family, and I think they should be able to get an enhancement if none of them have a specific disease. So, for his mother, I think it makes best sense to split over the policy. If he's really keen, he can also go for some of the senior citizen plans. Because then some co-payment will come in. But if he has an existing policy,
and now there are a lot of options for senior citizens.
There are a lot of options for senior citizens. However, there is some co-payment between 20 to 50% that can be required in those.
Right. We've got Vishal from Himachal Pradesh. Go ahead, Vishal, with your question.
I'm 39 years old and my wife is 33. We have a family history of high blood pressure and sugar. We want to take a floater cover for about 4 lakhs. What would be your suggestions?
So you should easily be able to get a floater cover. Now, when you have a history of BP and sugar, it depends on the members that are getting in and what stage they are at. So whether they are taking medicine through tablets or whether they are getting insulin injections, if somebody has reached the stage of insulin injections, it's pretty difficult to get a cover. But if not, covers are usually available with a little bit of wait periods. There's also the possibility of getting a cover with a permanent exclusion on a particular disease. So suppose somebody has reached the insulin stage and they say, okay, this is a disease that I will cover, but everything else can somebody please cover. Then, Religare Health, etc. have got options where you can take the plan with a permanent exclusion on sugar-related diseases.
Right, Yashish, we've got Amit Khanna, who's written to us. He says, can we transfer an NCB to a new vehicle, a no claim bonus, that is? What is the process for transfer?
Basically, once you sell your vehicle, you retain the no claim bonus. When you buy a new vehicle, when you yourself buy a new vehicle, you can take the no claim bonus that you carried on your old vehicle into a new vehicle. This is a very powerful tool. So you could actually have a Maruti 800 for which you had 50% no claims bonus. You could buy a brand new Mercedes and you would get a 50% no claims bonus on that as well, as long as
they don't really tell you that, do they? When you're buying
well, you're supposed to know it also, but yeah, you.
So you can actually say that, look, this is my old insurance policy.
This is my old insurance policy. I've sold this car. I want to transfer this no claim bonus, because the no claim bonus is not related to the car. It's related to the driver. So as long as the same driver, so as long as Arjun Bhagat is buying the Mercedes, he can transfer his no claim bonus from the Maruti to the Mercedes.
I'll keep that in mind. But that's all the time that we have on this show. But write to us, ask@policybazaar.com. You can tweet us at policybazaar_in, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.